Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Edgemans and Job coming to you guys here today with another deck tech. So today we're going to be looking at a standard deck, and it is Rakdos Burn. So for you guys that are unfamiliar with Rakdos, it's a guild that is red and black. So the cards that we're going to be using here are red and black. Now the deck mainly focuses on red with just a little bit of splash of black for some certain cards that we're going to go over here. But before we get to that, if you guys have any suggestions for decks that you would like to see, please leave that down in the comments below. And be sure to check out the description below where I have a playlist of all the decks that I've covered so far and decks that I will cover in the future. So use that as a reference as well. So the first thing that we're going to be taking a look at here is the mana base. So for the mana base, we have Blood Crypts, and we're running a playset of them. We don't have very many cards that we need black mana for, but it's good to have fixing for it. So we're running a playset of Blood Crypts. From there we have Dragonskull Summit, so we're running a playset of the Summit as well, providing black mana. And those are the only dual lands that we have for our land base. We only have those 8 4-shock lands, 4 core set dual lands, and the rest are basics. So from there we have mountains, so we're running 11 mountains. So we'll break it off into 4, 4, and 3. And then we have 3 swamps, so yet again some more production of black mana. So overall we have 11 sources of lands that can provide black mana for us, which is good. We want to have enough. We want to have a decent bit of red mana so we can play like double color spells and stuff like that. And effectively we can play it whenever we need it and at the earliest that we can play it. But other than that, we do still have a good presence of black mana in the land base, enough that we can play around the splash of black and not run into problems, or at least not very often. Alright, so now we're going to be taking a look at everything else. So starting off with the creatures, we have Stromkirk Noble. So he can't be blocked by humans, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he's a 1/1 for 1, and if you get him out, ideally turn 1, and your opponent doesn't lay down any blockers or anything like that, he can get pretty big pretty quick, and they have to deal with him. Against more creature-heavy decks, you kind of want to side him out for some more removal, but he's still really good turn 1. Another turn 1 play, we have Rakdos Cackler, so he's a 1/1 for hybrid black or red, and he has Unleash, so you can have him enter the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter. If you do, he can't block, so that's the only real big downside to him, but on turn 1 you can have a 2/2 swing next turn, and you can just get there with that. So play set of the Cackler, and this deck is really quick on the tempo. It tries to just beat out your opponent before they actually do anything, before they drop their Thrag Tusks or anything that gains them back life, and you just want to be quick on your tempo. Next we have Ash Zealot, so it's a 2/2 for double red, first strike and haste. First strike is relevant against other aggro if you run into it, and whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, she deals 3 damage to that player. So it's relevant against decks that are going to be using flashback spells and stuff like that. So we have a playset of the Zealot. Haste is always good. We like haste in a build like this one, and we use plenty of it. So playset of the Zealot. Next we have Rakdos Shred-freak, so he's a 2/1 for double hybrid black or red, and he has haste. So the great thing about this is if we don't have any sources of black, we can just pay double red for him, but overall, the haste is really good. Drop him turn 2, swing for 2, and then if your opponents can't drop any blockers or anything like that in the next couple of turns, next 2 or 3 turns, then they're pretty much screwed. It's a great way to outrace control-based decks. So we have a playset of the Shred-freak. Moving on to some bigger stuff, we have Hellrider. So I like Hellrider. Again, he has haste. He's a 3/3 for 4 mana, 2 generic double red. And whenever a creature you control attacks, Hellrider deals 1 damage to defending players. So the more creatures you have attacking whenever he attacks as well, the more damage you're going to be able to deal off of Hellrider. Now, a question that I get fairly often is, can you redirect damage that Hellrider is dealing to a Planeswalker? And the answer is yes, because it's non-combat damage that he's going to be dealing, because it's an effect. You can switch the target from your opponent to a Planeswalker your opponent controls. So it's an easy way to get rid of Planeswalkers that are down to like 2 or 3 loyalty, somewhere around there, or even 1 loyalty. You can just ping them off of Hellrider's ability and you don't have to worry about them. So we're running 3 Hellriders. Hellrider is very good on top of having at least like 1 or 2 more creatures out there. Alone, if there are no blockers, he swings for 4 on his own. So 3 from just his power, and then 1 off of his ability from him attacking. And the more creatures you have, the more you're going to be able to deal. Other 4-drops, we have Falkenrath Aristocrat. So this is a 3-of in the build as well. So flying, haste, 4/1 for 4 mana. It does have black in the mana cost, but it's 2 generic, 1 black, 1 red. And sacrifice a creature and she becomes indestructible until the end of the turn. If the sacrificed creature was a human, put a +1/+1 counter on her. So overall, she's pretty much kind of on the same power level as Hellrider. I like Hellrider more just because he can become a lot bigger depending on how many creatures you have swinging. But alone, Falkenrath Aristocrat is pretty good. And if you want to make her indestructible, have her survive bonfires, spot removal, anything like that, then it's still pretty good. You can just sack something small like the Cackler if you can't block, and you can have her gain indestructible, and she can swing in next turn. But both Hellrider and Falkenrath Aristocrat, because they can swing in the turn that they're played, they're both really good. So 3 Aristocrats, and those are all the creatures that we're playing now. For the rest of the spells, we have Bump in the Night. So Bump in the Night's probably a card that a lot of players wouldn't expect to see in Constructed, but it is. So for 1 black, target opponent loses 3 life, and it has a flashback for 5 generic and 1 red, which is a little bit expensive just for your opponent to lose 3 life. But if it gets to some later stage form of the game, kind of late game there, and you don't really have anything else that you can do, you might as well flash it back, and it could mean the difference between winning or losing. 3 life is a fairly decent bit of life for your opponent to be losing for 1 black. And a flashback, if nothing else, if you just hit into a land drop and you can't do anything else, flashing it back is good for 3 more life loss there. So we're running a playset of Bump in the Night. I'm going to put those up there. Then we have Pillar of Flame. So for you guys that can't read Japanese, I'll put an English one up there. So deals 2 damage to target creature or player. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. So Pillar of Flame is an easy way to make sure that stuff like zombies and Drops Messenger, they don't have any shenanigans off of that. Gravecrawler as well. And also you can just deal 2 damage. You can shock your opponent's Planeswalkers and remove loyalty counters. But ultimately it's another burn spell for 1 red. And the big target of it is going to be any small creatures that you don't want to actually hit the graveyard. And even stuff like Blood Artist. Blood Artist is a good target for it as well, so no dying triggers happen. So, play set of Pillar of Flame, just a cheap burn spell. Then we have Searing Spear. So Searing Spear is a 1 generic, 1 red, and it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So again, creatures, players, planeswalkers, pretty self-explanatory. Running a playset of the Searing Spear. Then we have Flames of the Firebrand, so we're only running 1 of these. So it's a 3-cost sorcery and it deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures and or players. So the great thing about Flames of the Firebrand is that you can choose to get rid of more creatures, like if your opponent's playing Lingering Souls or Midnight Haunting, something along those lines. You can get rid of multiple creatures, or if they have like a 1 toughness and a 2 toughness creature, you can get rid of both of them. Or you can divide it amongst getting rid of a Planeswalker and just dealing like 1 damage or 2 damage to your opponent. It's versatile for 3 mana, and it's deals 3 damage for 3 mana. It's pretty fair. So we're running 1 of them in the off chance that we run into some small creatures that we can get rid of game 1. But from there, we have 3 Brimstone Volley, so I like Brimstone Volley more as a 3-drop, but it's a 3-cost 2 generic 1 red, and it deals 3 damage to target creature or player, and there's Morbid, where Brimstone Volley deals 5 damage to that creature or player instead if a creature died this turn. So you can play off of swinging in with your creatures. If your opponent like blocks something and ends up killing it, then you can Brimstone Volley for 5 and just deal a huge chunk of damage to your opponent. So 3 Brimstones, and that is the deck. So it's really straightforward. It's pretty easy to see what we're going to be doing with this deck. We just have a lot of haste dudes, a lot of burn, and the only big thing is siding and knowing what to side for matchups and stuff like that. So I decided I was going to show you guys the sideboard that I would use if I was playing this deck, and just kind of give you ideas of what you want to play in your local meta and against the decks that you might see or you have seen in weeks before or something like that. So first off, we have Rakdos Charm. So we're running 2 Rakdos Charm in the side. So 1 black, 1 red, and you choose 1, exile all cards from target player's graveyard or destroy an artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. The big thing with Rakdos Charm is it's going to be artifact hate, and it's also graveyard removal. So if your opponent's playing like Unburial Rites, any combo shenanigans off of that, you can get rid of their possible targets of reanimation. We have Dreadbore as well. Dreadbore is really good. When Pillar of Flame ends up doing pretty much nothing, we're going to be siding up Pillar of Flame for Dreadbore, and Dreadbore is just a better removal there because, I mean, if dealing 2 damage isn't going to get the job done, Dreadbore definitely will, at the cost of maybe sometimes not having that black mana. The deck runs enough black that you don't really run into that problem a lot, but it does happen here or there. But Dreadbore definitely is good removal for just that 2 mana. So play set a Dreadbore in the side. Then we have Bonfire of the Damned, so I'm running 3 of them in the side. So for any decks that run a lot of creatures, token-based stuff, anything like that, whenever you hit into the miracle cost, Bonfire just wipes out everything. So for X amount of mana and 1 red, if you draw into it and it's the first card that you drew for the turn, you just deal X amount of damage and you deal it to your opponent or Planeswalker if you choose to actually redirect it. But you wipe out all of their creatures, you deal damage to them. Overall, really good. So against smaller creatures, it's really nice. Then we're getting into just kind of taking our opponent's stuff. So we have Traitorous Blood. So for 3 mana, it's a sorcery. Gain control of target creature until the end of the turn. Untap it. It gains trample and haste until the end of the turn. So we can take our opponent's stuff, and we're running 3 of these. If our opponents are playing something like Reanimator, anything with like a lot of big creatures, even Armada Worms if we want to take an Armada Worm, anything that's big and clunky and has a good board state and is kind of hard to remove with removal, we want to take it with Traitorous Blood. And it's a good sideboard tech because you can take your opponent's stuff. It has trample, it has haste. If they want to block with their own creatures, then they're pretty much losing 1 or 2 things, or even maybe even more if they're double blocking or something to get around trample. But ultimately, Traitorous Blood is really good in just being able to turn your opponent's stuff against them. So 3 of those. And the last card that we have is Mizzium Mortars. So what often ends up happening is against aggro decks, Stromkirk will side out and Mizzium Mortars will side in because he's going to be pretty much dead. But Mizzium Mortars is also good removal. The Overload, you don't really go very much into the Overload, but it's there. If you can work with it, it can happen and you can benefit from it. But mainly, Mizzium Mortars is another spot removal against aggro. So 3 Mizzium Mortars there. So that is the Rakdos burn deck. So if you guys enjoyed it, please be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content. And the deck list is down below if you guys missed out on anything. And remember to have a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.